I don't really know how many of these I'm gonna make, but I'm hoping that I'll keep making them because my mind is very focused at the moment on the issues, and my motivation hope might be picking up a little bit. And it seems a shame to leave all this stuff in my head. So this is kind of like a sequel to feeling abandoned when you stand up for yourself, and I might even just call it feeling abandoned when you stand up for it too. Because I'm watching a lot of really, I've got a lot. What's on my mind at the moment? I'm not. I'm not a stupid person. Okay. I'm not an academic person. I'm not a particularly worldly person. So, in the areas that are left after you've discounted both of those, I don't know what my IQ is. I don't know what my problem solving capacities are. I suspect they're poor. I have dyslexia, so I have enormous trouble doing research and, you know, being knowledgeable. I I have a lot of brain fog issues. I think it's getting better, but that brings with it a lot, you know. Um, I don't get to prove that I'm smart in all those ways, and yet I think that my problem with people is, and I have a problem with people to the point where I can imagine if I was involved in a number of unfortunate incidents, or if I was being harassed and I went to the police, or if I was in court, or if I had a job and I wasn't getting on with people, I imagine somebody saying to me eventually, or quite early on, well, there seems to be a lot of disharmony around you, Mr. WTF. You seem to alienate people wherever you go. When there's a problem, you seem to be the common denominator. Maybe you should look at yourself. And this is one of the most difficult areas. Coming out of being a scapegoat and a victim of narcissistic abuse. Because the shoe fits. The shoe fits. Maybe I'll use that as part of the title. The shoe fits. One of the problems is that people are narcissistically abused by their family, and they're framed, you know, like the old meaning of the word, like they're framed. They're framed as the scapegoat, like somebody being framed for a crime they didn't commit. And the framing is so complete. Whereas, rather than it being a sort of a, you know, classic sort of murder story where somebody claims they're a patsy and that they're being framed for a murder because powerful people wanted somebody killed, and, you know, etc., etc. They know they're innocent, and and they just wish somebody would believe them. Well, this is the beauty, for want of a better word, of the narcissistic abusive situation. Excuse me a minute. Is that you believe it too. You you are indoctrinated into the I know for some people this is entry level stuff, but it's worth going over again because it's such an extraordinary thing. It makes it more Orwellian and more 1984 than JFK type the scenario. You know what I mean? Where you've watched the movie JFK. There's only really one question: was Lee Harvey Oswald a patsy or not? You know. But in 1984, the whole point of 1984 is that it doesn't really matter what the truth is because what people think to be true is dictated by the state. And a narcissistic family is like 1984 in miniature. It's basically it's not about being right. It's about who cares what's right. We're in charge anyway. And the only thing that matters, so there isn't really a lot of difference between the victim believing that they are innocent or believing that they are malign, as long as they're powerless. And it's usually a weird mixture, isn't it? It's usually because I think as far as they push it, like say in 1984, Winston Smith does toe the line. He is a good citizen. He does behave himself, right? But in secret, he keeps a diary. And he keeps a diary to keep his version of what he believes is real going. Because he knows that it's his job. He's one of the people whose job it is to go back through the records and change the records in the archives, in the newspaper archives, television archives. So if you like, one of the most entertaining things about the Mandela effect and interesting things about it is that the Mandela effect is almost like a sort of, regardless of whether it's real or not, has really happened or not, I can't get into that here, that's not what this channel's for, but the Mandela effect asks the question, but we remember it differently. And when we look at the archive footage, we find that most of it's been updated too, but we find the odd little trace of it. So in a way, the Mandela effect has a kind of paranoid, Orwellian aspect to it, where people are saying, but I definitely remembered that Nelson Mandela died in the late 80s or early 90s, rather than when we're now told he died. But when and to their horror, they find that the archive is supporting the new narrative. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Or is it, do you know what I mean? Well, the thing is, we're living in an increasingly narcissistic society. It's almost like, in the West, it's almost like narcissism has taken root. We no longer have to fend for ourselves in terms of hunting and gathering and fighting and food. We have a very comfortable life, even though we complain a lot. We seem to have brought misery with us. And one of the ways we brought misery into what to so many people would be a paradise, we have to remember that, I don't know how much of the population it is it 2/3 of the population live in poverty? I think about it, angers me because my condition renders me pretty useless. But I am in a position at the moment where when I'm hungry, I can choose what I eat. And I think about that. I don't take that for granted. And it bothers me because I don't want to be a lazy, selfish, thoughtless Westerner, you know? But that's as much as I can do, is be aware and be grateful that I'm in the position I am. Because the problem is, of course, being a victim of narcissism, there's so much I'm not grateful for, and it's a real problem, and I don't think I'm alone in this, and I think we've all got to face it, and it's really, really tricky. Is you, for all intents and purposes, if you live in the... See, I think narcissism is the scourge of the West. I'm not saying narcissism can't exist in poor countries. I absolutely believe it does, right? But I think narcissism breeds in comfort, like in the way that uh, flu germs can sometimes, or if I understand correctly, they're more likely to breed if you have your central heating up high in the winter because the conditions are good for bacteria. When if you can bear it, it would be better to live in something not necessarily outside temperatures, but to just basically keep your house, keep your pipes from freezing over kind of thing, but don't live in a hot house because in a hot house, bacteria runs wild and colonizes, you know. I think narcissism does that in the comfortable West. It's just a theory. But and I think it's all around us, and I think it's almost like a fungal infection of the psyche, and I think it spreads, and I think it, you know, I'm gonna mix my metaphors up as usual, or like head lice, you know, maybe it is like a parasite. I do wonder sometimes. So I've had this ever such a strange time because I've basically been standing up to people more, and I don't know if it's the medication. I don't know if it's my age, and I'm getting a little older, and my body chemistry is changing. You know, I might be entering. I might be on the edge of the male menopause. I don't know, but I certainly know I'm certainly not the man I was. Well, I'm not the man I was when I started looking after my mum, and I'm not the man I was when I started my channel, even. But I would say that's got a lot more to do with my psychological state that I was in then. Um, but for whatever reason, people are getting much shorter shrift with me. I'm being more direct. I'm not being aggressive, although there can be some aggression with it, but I'm being direct. And I'm not even sure I'm doing the right thing. I don't know what a wise man would do in my situation, and I'm going to tell you about the situation. I I know I'm in a situation that I don't think I know I'm in situations that I don't think a wise man would be in. And this is what we're going to talk about today. The damage is done. I've already fucked up. I've let people in my circle, in the fishbowl of my social circle, mixed metaphors from to a penny. I've already let them have so much line. I've let them think it's okay to behave in such a disrespectful fashion, right? That I'm already in a situation that I can't dismantle. And that means that when I have to be direct, there are all kinds of problems. Because people now think I'm being unreasonable. People think that I'm being hurtful. They think I'm being even irrational. They think I'm being cruel. They think I'm being, most of all, what they do is, and don't forget, I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm not a dumb person. So when I confront somebody or when I'm being direct with somebody, I'm not just nitpicking or being nasty. I only do this when I've got absolutely no choice. When the person has been niggling away at me, trying to undermine me, you know, and then eventually they just go too far. Like last night, one of my friends, one of the ways people do this is they ask, this is, and I must tap my head to my really good friend. I'm going to use his nickname, my really good friend Salem, about this. he identified this. I mean, we've talked about it. I've had a problem with it for ages, but he kind of drew a line around it and gathered it all together into an observation. One of the ways people undermine you is they ask a lot of questions. I don't know if I'm the first. I doubt I'm the first person in the community to notice this, but let's do it today. Asking questions is a way of tripping up somebody that they think they want to undermine, because eventually, what they're doing is they're waiting for you to give an answer that they can criticise. Now, I left the pub last night with one of my friends, a friend who really has pissed me off, and we were a little bit worse for wear, and we'd had, it turns out, 3.5 pints. 3.5. I forgot. I thought we'd had 4, because I knew we'd been to the bar that number of times. You know what I mean? So when I said to him, now he was a little bit tipsy, and so was I, and I said to him, "Hey, I think you're a little bit drunk, right?" Because we were having a. Didn't sound like a lot of alcohol, but I don't go out much these days, and so when we see each other, we sort of. It was probably a lot of alcohol in the time frame we were there. You know what I'm saying? We were probably having a pint every 45 minutes, and then this half at the end. So basically, he said, and when I saw he was going to take offence at that, I immediately said, "Oh, don't worry, so am I," and he was really off about it. Like, this was a problem now. This observation I'd made, I'd somehow taken the higher ground. As far as I wasn't, right? The reason this came up was he does tend to interrupt a lot, and you see, this video is going to be about a lot of things, isn't it? And actually, that's a good thing, because it's going to expose some of my thinking, and I'm hoping some of you will relate to some of my thinking, which this is what the video is ultimately going to be about. I may not get it all into this video, but if I make a few of these, or over the next couple of weeks as I make videos, I hope I do continue to, this will be a theme. We are somehow at fault. I don't mean that we're to blame. I mean we mechanically are integrated into the narcissistic array. Okay? So basically, what I'm saying is, he does tend to interrupt, and because I'm starting to be more direct, and it was getting tiresome being interrupted a lot and letting this person undermine me very subtly without it. We've got to understand, they don't necessarily know they're doing it. They're used to this being the way it is. This bad manners, this is the dynamic between you and this person, and you can inform that dynamic up to a point. You can start to let people know that it isn't going to be like that anymore. Like, there are things that I have changed in the relationship, like this person used to take, I was such a people pleaser, this person used to take it for granted he could come back to the house and we could have a drink at the house after the pub. But as my mum got iller and iller and then died, I just couldn't cope with that. I needed the 3 or 4 pints that we had at the pub was as much as I could cope with if I was going to be all right. I couldn't drink more. And this person would quite happily stay till 3 or 4 in the morning, and in my people pleaser kind of programming, I just couldn't get rid of them. I know it sounds horrific, but I believe that, and I'm not saying I don't like this person. I'm not saying they're not ever a good friend. It's all true. They're a good friend and they're a pain in the ass. They're very intelligent, and they're incredibly lacking in self-awareness in some areas. They're capable of extraordinary sympathy and compassion, and even wisdom, and yet there are other occasions when they're capable of extreme extraordinary lack of insight. You know, adolescent competitiveness and foolishness. This is a problem that we, as survivors of narcissism, seem to have to deal with a lot. And that's really what I want to make this about. And I think if I was wise, I should make that, my whole channel should be about this. I should certainly make a long series about this, because I think this is what I'm going to bring to the party. I'm not sure I've seen it anywhere else. I could be wrong, I don't see all the videos, and things have moved on, you know. There are a lot of new people making videos, people have come and gone, you know. I could have missed this. I'm going to do what I do and bring what I bring. And what I'm trying to say to you is my next here you go, let's put it like this. The next module in my recovery is dealing with this. Understanding how this has happened. Understanding how I've helped make it happen, understanding how I've helped maintain it and sustain it, and understanding how sometimes when I deal with it, I don't deal with it in the right way, and sometimes when I deal with it in not the right way, that has consequences too, and also a fair bit of trying to, it's not so much have compassion for the people that pull this number, okay? It's being very careful not to go into indignation and superiority and righteousness. My therapist used to say to me, you do expect a lot of people. And it used to make me so pissed, right? Because but the fact it made me angry was the tell, okay? Because here's my reaction to being told I expect a lot of people. Well, people expect a lot of me. Do you hear that? I mean, some of you are going to be like, yeah, no, that's fair, that's right. And yes, that's correct, but look at the emotion of it. What am I saying? Well, because I've had a horrible time, there's no excuse for anybody else not to be better than me. Again, if you're recovering and you are in this path, you might be thinking, I'm bang on. You might be thinking, amen. You know what I mean? But look at it. That's not how it is. That's not what's going to happen. That's not true. It's you being a victim. It's me being a victim. It's me being a victim. When I need to get out of being a victim. Because somehow, when we're being a victim, we are chucking out supply. It's not just the supply that they gobble up in our presence. You know what I mean. In the same way that when you break up with somebody and around the 3 or 4 week mark you start to get over it, and that's when the phone call or the text or the email comes, just when you were starting to get. How do they know? How do they know you're getting free? How? Because the supply has dropped off. I don't know how this works. I don't care. I just know it's happened to me enough times that I would be foolish not to think it's possible. And then you go beyond that and you follow it and you apply it, you observe and you try different things, right? If the shoe fits. here's what I worked out. When it came to things like using the law of attraction, when it came to things like paranormal experiences, anything like that, I kept it like this, right? I can't prove the law of attraction really works. I can't prove that paranormal entities are real. But if I go along with what I think to be true being true and see what happens, I will get off this train as soon as it stops working. It sounds a little bit seductive, a little bit dangerous, but this was me keeping one foot firmly planted in the other world. I'm not going to be going into a lot of detail about that side of things because it's very personal and it's private and it's not what the channel's about. But let's just say that when you look after somebody in isolation and sleep deprivation, you are susceptible under enormous pressure to things that you may not have been if you'd been more busy and getting enough sleep. That's all I'm prepared to say for now. But and you still have to stay sane. You have a responsibility to keep yourself together. Okay? So you can't, especially if you're looking after somebody. But let's just say that you have to entertain. It's that line from Shakespeare about there are more things in heaven and earth. You can't know. You can't be sure. You can only it's like a scientific theory. If something is repeatable and observable, you have to kind of like entertain it as a possibility. But we'll move on from that because it's not well what this video is about today. I think that your ex knows when you're getting over them, and I think the narcissist knows when the supply is drying up. I think if you want to test it, just think about the fact that sometimes you know when something's happening. I mean, think about sometimes, let's say you've got a little dog and they're a bit naughty, and you know they've got a really bad habit of trying to claw the dirt away from the bottom of the fence so they can go and run down the street, right? And you caught them doing it and you've told them off and you've scolded them and all that, and then you've forgotten about it, and then one day you're reading the paper and you don't know where the dog is, and suddenly you know what they're doing. Now you could just say it's like it's just like, you know, your brain has just done that. You've worked it out. But your dog could be asleep in his kennel. He could be asleep in his basket. But you go out there and you get out there, and that dog is running away from that fence because they know you're onto him. Because you get it. I mean, that's just a bad example. But I'm not saying telepathy is real. I don't know. All I know is this is what happens, and if you deny it, you don't get to move forward. You know? Oh, and by the way, that thing I was saying earlier about paranormal stuff, be very careful with that. Don't solicit it. I'm not saying it's okay. It's a very dangerous world. I mean, it's not a place to play in. If you get into a situation like I did, you will need help. If you haven't got any training or anything like that, do not mess around with Ouija boards. And if you want to do things like tarot cards, if you want to, do them with someone who knows what they're doing. I never did any of that stuff, although I did have a friend who was into tarot cards, and but he did the pulling, he did the reading. The nearest I came, what might have made me susceptible, is I did do some, what is it called, the crystal healing, because I was really looking for my health. I was looking after my mum, and my health was getting really bad. I had a lovely, lovely crystal healer. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, so annoying. But crystal healing anyway, and she was a lovely person. But apparently that's a danger that can open you up. Or it may have just been the susceptibility. People think I'm crazy now. I can't do anything about what you think. I'll tell you right now. I'm the sanest person who's had a paranormal experience I know. You know, and I know a few, and I'm not having by which I mean I haven't made it in my life. I know perfectly sane people who I've gone to for help, who are spiritualists, members of spiritual churches, and all that sort of thing, and they're sane. They're not crazy, but they've made it their whole life. I haven't made it my whole life. So when I say I'm the sanest, I don't mean I'm superior. I mean I've gone back to my real life. You know what I mean? For the most part, I don't spend my life chanting, reading about spiritualism or anything. I had a very interesting experience, which had a positive side to it and a negative side to it. You know, because when you interact with that world, you you don't just get the nice guys. And it humbles you, honestly. It humbles you. You realise you're not what you thought you were. You're not as powerful as you thought you were. You're not the be all and end all of the universe. I mean, I know I was a scapegoat victim, but I still had a lot of egocentric issues. That, it kind of makes you religious, actually. I don't mean Sunday school religious, but it makes you very grateful that there is something good in charge. Now some of you really will be switching off, but it's not a journey I'd recommend to anybody. It was a very dark time, very difficult time that was then made a lot better by a very kind entity and made very frightening by several very unpleasant entities. And this is where I wonder what the relationship is between narcissism as a parasite, a fungal parasite that works on the psyche of people. Because I feel like wherever you are in the world, there's a certain amount of suffering. If you're in Africa, it might be the violence and the poverty, and there's been so much outrageous stuff going on. There's obviously, you've got Syria, you've got Palestine, and all these terrible things going on. In this world, in the West, where we're not trying to kill each other, or we're not starving. We might have a lot of unhappiness. There's still child abuse, there's still rape, there's still violence, there's still murder, but it's not on the scale that it is. It's not, ISIS aren't walking down our streets, okay? So it has to come through something else. It has to breathe, it has to breed, it has to get its fingers into our reality. It's a theory. I'm not saying it's true. I don't know what's true. I didn't used to think like this at all. And the reason we're introducing this tract is because I believe that people know where you're at, and when the victim starts to outrun the abusive array, the narcissistic array, the boundaries that have been created for them, the compound in which they're meant to be kept by your friends, by people who like you. But don't forget what people liking you can mean. Someone liking you doesn't always mean they want you to be free. A selfish or unenlightened person or an immature person can like someone because of what you make them feel like. And if they want a little dog who they can kick around, it's sad, isn't it? I mean, some of you like me a lot. I've had really nice comments. Some of you I've thought over the time I've done the channel that I've done good work, and that you wish, you say sometimes, that you could have thought of that. You're doing great. You are thinking of it. Because me talking like this is just a bit matching up with a bit. You're doing other things. You're thinking other things. And you'll think like this more. It's great. Okay? Likewise, other channels, many other channels. I've had, revelatory moments watching Richard Grannon, watching Ollie Matthews, watching Narcissism Survivor, and watching Escape from Narcissism. Hey, Rachel, hope you're watching. The adorable Rachel. And others that I remember. Now I'm going to forget their names. But somebody did a video on executive function. I keep forgetting a name. It's so unfair. And that was a life changer. Executive function. I hadn't heard of it before. I hadn't heard about it anywhere else. I'm so sorry. I'll try and put a link underneath. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I've forgotten your name. It's not acceptable. But I'll try and make sure I put a link to that video. These were game-changing moments I had with all of these, sometimes several game-changing moments. Is it Amy Hall? I'll try and find out her name. I'm so sorry about that. And some of you think I'm all right, and that maybe, I've been helpful to you. Well, imagine knowing me as a friend, right? And instead of valuing me, instead of enjoying my company, instead of finding me funny, instead of thinking that I was intellectually stimulating, instead of feeling like when I was around you weren't so alone, right? Imagine if you felt like bleeding me to make yourself feel better. Imagine if you felt every time you knew you were going to see me like, well, this will be good because this is going to pay off. This is going to be about me feeling superior. I don't mean to be really horrible about my friend, but it's just got ridiculous. And here's where I go next. So we come out of the pub. And the reason I said he was a little bit drunk was because he'd been interrupting me all night, and as I got more drunk with everything that's going on for me, I was finding it harder and harder to tolerate. And so I actually picked him up on it. I was direct emotionally, but I wasn't direct intellectually. And he'd interrupt me. He was talking, and I wanted to finish what I was saying, and now I wanted to respond what he was saying now. It was good stuff, but it was just getting a bit much. And then he took a breath, and I just said, "Is it my turn to talk now?" And please understand, I mean, he'd gone on for like 3 or 4 minutes. It was like, and he'd cut me up, and then, and that's what I said. And he didn't like it. So now this is where I'm at fault. So when I said to him he was a little drunk, you are absolutely within your rights to make a judgment. I'm telling you my story, make a judgment. Right? When I said to him, I think you're a little drunk, I was trying to take the edge off the situation because I'd basically put him on the spot. I'd put him on the back foot, saying, "Is it my turn to talk now?" I mean, it's not that I was wrong. I was right. But I wanted to sort of go, I made an excuse for him, didn't I? I was kind of saying, it's all right that you interrupted me and I had to cut you up because you're pissed. You're pissed up. You're drunk. You're inebriated. You're making a misjudgment. Don't worry, it's fine. I don't know if you've realised, but being a little drunk, you've not realised that you've interrupted and not let me speak again for an extended period of time. So as we left the pub, I was saying it came up again. Now he did not like it because this isn't part of the narrative. It's not part of the narrative that he makes misjudgments. It's not part of the narrative that he gets drunk. It's not part of the narrative that I say things like, "Is it my turn to speak yet?" You know, that's not in the script. So he's pissed, right? A little bit pissed in both ways. He's a little bit inebriated and he's a little bit cross, right? And I just said to him on the way out of the pub, well, you know, you're going to be a little drunk. You've had 4 pints. No, I haven't. And I thought, oh, yeah. And I remembered we had 3.5. And I was like, 3.5 pints? Like, for all the world, like, that makes a lot of difference. You know, like, one last half pint. It might make a difference in the morning, but it ain't going to make a difference right now. And I said to him, pedancy has its limits, you know. And he said, oh, does it? He's in it now. He's in the zone. He can't be gracious. He can't extend towards me. And I'm not saying I deserve it. But he can't. He's not on the page of extending any latitude to me, where I try to get past this awkward moment where I run out of patience. Okay, by saying, you know, maybe you're pissed. Maybe that's why you're being rude. But so in the next 10 minutes, he managed to contradict me constantly the whole time. We went to get some money out of the hole in the wall because we might go for a drink again this week, and sometimes with it being the holiday period, sometimes the hole in the wall runs out of money. And I said to him, I was just talking about there were loads of pretty girls in the pub that night, and I said there were some really pretty girls in there tonight. And he was like, do you like pretty girls? Are you into pretty girls? I was like, what is this? I mean, sexist or not, we were 2 drunk men. I wasn't being gross, I wasn't being crude. There were just some really attractive women around that night. And I just said to him, gosh, there were some pretty attractive women in the pub tonight. Okay, so that's not working. And I said, yeah, I like girls, remember? Anyway, we were walking down the way home, and I talked to him about the problems I've been having with my medication, and he knows a bit about medicine, and he trained and stuff, and so we're having that conversation because I'm having trouble knowing what time to take my meds so that I'm functional at the right times of the day or evening when we want to do stuff. I'm finding that I tend to crash about 9 o'clock and need to sleep a lot, so I'm trying to figure out. We were talking about this, and then he just started contradicting me and asking a lot of questions. I say, to be honest, asking questions more than contradicting me, to be honest. And I was just finding this really tiresome. And it's bad enough. It'd be bad enough any time, but when you've had a few pints, this isn't what you want. And you know what he was doing? I'd got to him, talking to him about this, him being drunk, and interrupting me, and he just wanted to claw something back. He can't acknowledge that I, as another adult, might take exception to his behaviour, and it's fair enough. We all piss each other off sometimes. In the push and pull and back and forth of life. No. He's got to prove to himself. He's not a narcissist, as far as I can tell, but he's very narcissistic. He's got to prove to himself, before the night is over, that he's ahead, that he goes home with more marbles in his jar. And all I've done is speak to him directly. In a funny way, I think I was, apart from the fact that I probably shouldn't have been trying to sugarcoat it, I was kind of being more respectful by being direct. Because isn't it terrible to think something about someone, to think that they are inadequate in some way, like whether it's their personal hygiene, or whether it's their manners, or whether it's that they keep making they keep talking too loud in a pub and embarrassing themselves and you. Isn't it disrespectful to not flag that up and think it and not say it? I think you should do it tactfully if you can, but I think it's wrong to not. I think it's wrong to harbour it. And I have done that. I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that because I'm a people-pleasing scapegoat motherfucker. It's coming to an end though. And this is really what the video is about. As it comes to an end, you're going to have a lot of problems. I'm having a lot of problems. Not just with King Narc and the narky little family. That's done. Now I've got to clean up the rest of my life. And all the people who think I'm just there to be the little bitch. So I'm going to wind this up. It's going to be an hour-long video, this now, I can see. And I don't want to overrun an hour because I won't be able to load it up otherwise. But basically, so we're walking down the street and he starts asking me, I started relaying to him how when I first started taking the medication, I had a lot of problems with side effects on this sleep problem. And then I rang somebody up who was, from the clinical place that prescribed it, and got some advice. Straight away he's onto this, asking me questions about who did I ring? Did I make sure that I rang the person who'd prescribed it? Did I make sure? And I had, but he's on to me. And he said, you've got to talk to your GP. And I said, well, my GP didn't prescribe it to me. It was prescribed to me by a psychiatrist. So straight away, that's gone wrong. You know what I mean? Now he's looking silly. And he was pushing and pushing and pushing. And I said, can we just assume that I made sure I spoke to the right person and I'm not a fucking idiot? And he said, well, you are a fucking idiot. What do you make of that? And we had a row. This is what you get. This is what you get when you become a person. I'm going to leave it there for now. I really enjoyed making the video. There's a lot of threads in that video, a lot of stuff. I'm hoping I'm going to make one. I'd love to make one every day. I'm going to try, but I don't think it's going to happen. But that was great fun talking to you, knowing it's really weird because I don't feel like I'm just talking to my camera. It's almost like I can feel people listening to it. It's so weird, even though that can't possibly be happening now. If that didn't happen, I couldn't do it. And I'm sure it's true of a lot of people that make videos. It's such a strange phenomenon. It's almost like, so you'll notice when I'm talking, like say the thing about the paranormal activity, I'm kind of like trying, it's almost like I can feel the reaction. And I want to not, and sometimes different people are having different reactions. Like some people who have also had those kind of experiences are going to be like perfectly comfortable with it. So I don't have to address them at that point, but I have to address the portion of the audience. And I know you could just quite happily say, but that's just your brain doing the work. Whatever is it? I mean, whatever it is, my imagination, my brain, an ethereal sense, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be explained away. But what I find extraordinary is I definitely feel I'm in dialogue when I do this. And if I didn't, I couldn't do it. Anyway, winding it up. And I'd love to tell you I'm going to do another video after this. And I'm going to do another video tomorrow. And I hope I do. I seem to be picking up a little. I'm going to post this up. I hope you're all right. And I hope this has been helpful and interesting. And I hope you are finding your path, and I hope you don't feel alone. That's one thing I really got out of the paranormal experience. I hope you don't feel alone. I don't feel alone anymore. You take care, okay?